Welcome to Getting Ghosted. This is an Intuitive Soul Collective podcast, and I'm your host, Allie Horner. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I have something kind of special for you guys, and I know that I had mentioned in the past that episodes that I had wanted to start channeling people who were meaningful throughout history, but who had their voices sort of diminished or shut down in one way, shape, or form or another. And as we're in such huge times, and I know a lot of women and girls feel some very enthusiastic about creating change, and some are feeling a little bit disempowered. I started to feel that I was getting messages from a couple of different beings on the other side that were talking about the strength and the courage of women. And if you hadn't heard before, in the past, I had many people from the other side who were known for various things start to come through to me years ago. And they would each say, I want to share parts of my story that people may not know, but more so because I want to help them by telling them what I wish I'd known when I was alive about living a human life. And what I found was actually valuable at the end of the day. And it was very interesting. So I did tons of those channelings long time ago. And I noticed that more and more of this started to happen, but it was happening specifically with different women throughout history. So like when I would read a book or a story of by an author who had passed away a long time ago, they would come through and chime in and start talking about their life and what caused them to write the book, and make little side comments and all these different things. Same things when I would watch movies where a historical figure was mentioned. And I love like women's history, and I love biographies. Like I just like stuff like that. If you know me, you know I love to hear other people's stories and everything about all walks of life, especially like their intuition and psychic gifts. And I'm a huge sucker for women who have created change throughout history. And it was appalling to me when I realized how many women had been erased from the history books or just intentionally not included. And I won't get into why we know that happened, and why that may or may not have happened. But for me, it became very clear, like I know that I meant to channel these people on and off. And so I wanted to bring through the first one that's coming through really strongly. And so today we are going to have the lovely Sarah Chapman coming in. If you're not familiar, Sarah Chapman was one of the leaders of the Matchgirls Strike in July of 1888. She basically, back in the day, women were put in terrible conditions working, and these were women who did not have a lot of societal rank, as she's saying over here. She's standing over here like we're getting ready to talk. I could feel her coming in. I'm getting chills down my spine. And so a lot of these women, and she said, and really girls, she's showing me children, lots of children. She's showing me they were working in these match factories, and they were absolutely atrocious working conditions. Women in that day and age also had to wear, a lot of like these big dresses and petticoats, and like the attire that they had to wear, the hair, like they have long hair, all these different things. And she's showing fabrics and like hair things getting snagged in the machinery, and she's showing me heavy machinery. And she's also referencing, if you guys haven't seen, highly recommend this movie, Enola Holmes on Netflix. I know it's kind of made for kids, but I found as an adult, I was like, this is wonderful. So the second Enola Holmes movie is like kind of covers from a mostly fictional sense, Sarah Chapman in the Matchgirls Strike. And so it was a big deal at the time that this strike happened, because there was some 1,400 girls and women who walked out of the factory due to poor working conditions, being wildly underpaid, and also the match companies had begun using what's called white phosphorus, and it ended up being wildly toxic. And so all of these women and girls were getting very, very, very ill from it and dying from it. And they kept saying that it was consumption, or they had typhus, etc. They were blaming it on some sort of virus or bacterial infection. And so then they were turning women away from work, saying that they would be contagious, but actually it was the white phosphorus that they were using in the match factory that was making so many people so sick. And so that was just one of many things that they ended up going on strike for. And as I was thinking about, I really want to bring through these wonderful voices from history to tell more of their stories. And for whatever reason, I was really, really pulled to her, and I really try to trust what I feel and who I sense really coming through. And so she's coming through really strongly, and she's bringing me, I always see a lot of images in my head, and I will often hear this person talking, but I'm going to, bring through not just through mediumship where you stop and listen clairaudiently and then repeat back, though I may do some of that. I'm going to kind of switch into clear conduit channeling mode. So I will be talking a little bit more seamlessly, and I might stop and mention what I'm seeing or feeling and sensing as well as I go. And so she's coming in and she's saying, "Thank you, Allison." And she was saying, "I'm pleased to meet your acquaintance." And I noticed her stepping forward, like big time, like eager to hold out her hand to shake my hand. And she said she was calling me a revolutionary. And she said, but she's showing that it's literally just because there's so many women who are using their voice. She's saying, "Yes, so many of you use your voice and your choice so loudly now." And she said, "The timing of my coming to you is not without cause." She's saying it. She's showing it being ripe for the picking, and she said it's an important time in U.S. history, and she's saying also global history. She's showing certain political powers trying to come in different parts of the globe. And she's saying the Matchgirls Strike may seem like she said it seems like a far cry from what you are enduring, but she said she's showing the domino effect. She said it created quite she's showing like cause related activism. And she said because all of these women and girls decided to go on strike all at the same time, which she was one of, I believe, like 3 leaders of that strike. She's showing me that this caused a ripple effect, and that soon child labor conditions were changed in that part of the world and in England, and that they also had to stop using the white phosphorus, that they were able to create it was like a matchstick girls or matchmakers union and fight for their rights. And this actually caused, she's showing domino effect in terms of women and girls being recognized. And she's saying there was a lot of positive acclaim. She's using the word acclaim. And she's saying we had quite the outstanding ovation from many who were working toward positive reform on the parts of women and children. And she's showing these little children who just their hands are just covered in this black, it's like a soot sort of greasy type of thing. And they're coughing and coughing. And she said it in like, I'm seeing like blood kind of coming up as they're coughing. So a little trigger warning, but she's saying it broke our hearts to see so many. And she said it felt like all the work we were doing was in vain just to make a penny, and she's showing me like going up to get paid, and then the manager, the man who was like watching over everyone and making sure that they were, constantly working, saying like, giving like shortchanging them, cutting their pay short, and the woman or girl going, "What? Like I'm supposed to make this much?" And he goes, "Well, you took like a 5-minute blah, blah, blah. You were chit-chatting with so-and-so, or well, I decided this is what you get today." Like, and so she's saying it was quite atrocious working conditions. And she said, now the timing of this beautiful beginning for you in terms of, she's showing like the whole of the world, and she's showing women, she's saying, stand up for your rights. And she said, nothing changes unless you change it. And she said, you can't sit and simply wait. And she said, all of you are doing this beautiful work, but you have to come together. And she's showing so many women who are working. She said it's almost like side by side, but she said so many of you have the same. She's showing like individual purpose, but she said there is a core purpose in terms of the generations and the collectives and soul groups and soul families, there's much larger purposes that are intertwined with everyone else's. Like she said, this is the big show and this is what you came for. And so she's showing me how easy it is to create change once you can she's showing again like a mass group, like a large group of people rallying and not standing for it anymore. Oh my God, I just got chills. And I'm hearing that song from Les Mis. Can you hear the people sing? That one. Oh my God, just how it reminds me. And she said, it seems like, and I'm hearing the phrase, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And it's really, she's saying now while the Match Girls, march or revolution, the rebellion, while that may have seemed like a small step at the time, it actually was a catalyst for much larger reform and for unionizing and protecting workers' rights and ending, she's showing like white slavery. And she said, let's not even get into like fully ending the like slavery across the globe, because she was showing there's a lot of people who very literally are still in this. And she said, but reform is imminent. And she said, but had we not kicked off the revolution, it might not have happened in the same way. And she said, now life always finds a way. She's showing the universe always finds a way. And she's showing me almost like the law of cause and effect, like karma. And she's showing it as like the scales, like balancing and rebalancing and tilting too far to one side and then tilting back over. She said, and again, like a pendulum swinging, all elements of balance. And she's saying, now, you can swing really far in one direction, but then it is the law of nature that it's going to go back the other direction. And so she's saying this rebellion, this revolution that we created was long overdue and we won. And she said, and it tipped the scales in our favor. And she's saying, now all of you, what I would want you to know about my life is that while it took courage, it didn't seem so hard once we had rallied enough women toward positive reform. And she keeps using the word reform. And she said, it didn't feel so scary at the time. It felt like we had strength because we had strength in numbers. And she said, my friends were saying, aren't you worried? What you guys are going to lose your jobs? What are you going to do without pay? Who's going to feed your kids? Like all of these different things. And she said, I looked at these young children with all of this soot and, the garbage on the floor. She's showing like the awful, she said like people soiled themselves sometimes. I almost want to cry. It breaks my heart just because I'm seeing all these images and I can feel it. And she said because of the working conditions, they couldn't go to the bathroom all the time. And people getting their fingers cut, or hurt in the machinery. I don't want to go into too much detail, but she said, I saw these young women and young children who were just in such atrocious conditions. And she said, I had the same sentiment as you. And I often think, well, they're all our children. Like when I look at other kids and people are like, well, you just make sure your son Finn is taking, I'm like, but these are all of my kids. Like, I care that they're all taken care of. I don't get it when people like don't care about other people's children. Like, I'm like, I don't need to know them to like care about their well-being or their happiness, And so she said, that's exactly it. And she said, so I kind of considered all of these women, my family and my home and my heart, and I considered them mine. And she said, and on a soul level, she's showing them as a soul, a larger collective or a soul group. She said, we really matched wavelengths. And she said, the larger soul united us in a common ground and a common purpose, and it created common ground. And she said, and we marched together. And she's showing them all walking out of the factory. I just keep getting chills upon chills. And she's showing like these little girls with like bandaged fingers, and one has her arm in a sling, but she still has to work because she doesn't have money. Like she doesn't have money to live. And she's showing the workhouses, and women living, 2 or 3 people to a room, and just really poor living conditions as well. And so she's saying, this was quite a time of reform and revolution. And I want you to know how easy it can be to really create that change when it is truly time. And she said, she's showing a match being lit, and it's like she's showing herself standing in the dark, and it's like I can just see her face and her front of her body slightly glowing, and she's holding the match and giving it to me. And I reached out my hand to take it. And she said, no, hold out your candle. And then I went, oh, and I looked down, I had a candle and I held it out and she lit mine. And then I turned and there were women waiting for me to light theirs. And she said, remember the story of the little match girl? I don't know if you guys have ever heard that story, but she's showing, don't just keep lighting all of the matches, standing there in the cold, hoping that one match will keep you warm, so that you can make it till morning. Instead, she's saying, use your resourcefulness, use your intuition, use your inner knowing, like she said, think, and she's saying like you use your gusto, and she's saying like have a little bit of what I sometimes say is grace and gumption, and it's from an email. I forget the girl's name, so if anyone knows, if anyone else used to get her e-newsletters way back in the day, I can see her face in my head. I just haven't gotten her emails in a long time, so I don't want to like plagiarize her or quote her out of turn. But if anyone knows, just let me know, and I'll link up her stuff in the show notes. But she used to always say with grace and gumption at the end of her newsletters, and it really stuck with me. And Sarah Chapman is sitting here like, yes, and she's like making a fist and like, yeah, and so she said, with the little match girl, she succumbed to fear, and she didn't have the resourcefulness within her to think, oh, I should light a larger fire. I should get things together and light a larger fire. I should try to assemble some sort of shelter. I should try to go to an orphanage. I should try to, go to a shelter or do something. And she said instead she kept trying to sell her matches to people, and she couldn't sell enough to make enough money. And she said, and it's symbolic of how women will give away their gifts, what little they have, instead of thinking, how can I use this to create more, not just for myself, but for others. And she said, this is exactly what we would, she said, implore you to do. She said, it's quite important that you are making sure that you are on top of this, that you are, she said, being igniting each other, knowing that you are meant to rise and lead together, that when you light one person's candle, they can turn and light so many others. They're not meant to always give it away. They're meant to help, light that fire for others. And this can be anything. She's showing like energy flowing between people, and people kind of getting just this feeling of like, all right, you know what? F it, I'm going for it. F it, I'm changing this. F it, I'm not staying silent anymore. F it, it's time. I'm going to finally do that thing I've been thinking about doing, whatever it is. And she's showing how this can create times of positive change. And she said this also can be very literally like women banding together very physically with other women. And, she's showing like meeting in circle and getting together in community and saying, okay, like, what are we going to do? We need to do something. And starting to, she said, put heads together. She said, many of you are so scared to share your ideas and thoughts with the world. And she's showing a lot of women worrying about competition or having ideas stolen, or like, something I used to see a lot in woo-woo circles was people being kind of territorial about like their ideas or what they brought through. And I was like, well, spirit works, like they work with many people. I have no doubts in my mind that Sarah Chapman is working with other channels, whether they know it or not. I have often seen as well, like where I will see certain guides introduce different people who didn't even know each other. And I have so many stories about that type of stuff. I'll share it on another podcast episode, but that's how I've made actually some of my friends, is because guides on the other side introduced us. And it was just like out of nowhere. And one of those things that sounds like it would only exist in the movies, but it really does happen. And she's saying, yeah, there are many of us. Like she's showing there's so many, and she's showing women from all different points in history. And she said, like women who even existed in matriarchies that have also been erased from many of our history books, especially if I went to school in the Midwest, and just outside of the, I was in the Chicago suburbs. And I have to say, when I was younger, I had no idea how much had been removed from our history books. I really thought it was just men who did everything. I was like, well, it just must have been because of laws at the time and yada, yada. And I was like, but women aren't dumb. Women are really smart. Were they really just not doing anything? Like I was always skeptical, and so she's saying, yes, like, you didn't learn about the matriarchal societies, and now there's more information. You can find books on these things now. There are podcasts about them. There are books, there are documentaries, there's all sorts of things. But they weren't put in the history books because they wanted us to believe patriarchy was the only way. And so, she said, this is quite a revolutionary time and you need to put heads together instead of working. She said, like, each person is working on their own, and she's showing like, and that's valuable. Like, you are unique. She's showing like creators and speakers. And she said, but it's important for you guys to put like two heads together or more than two to create positive change, because you have strength in numbers on earth. And she said, if even just one of you thinks, you know what, damn it, like, gosh darn it, I'm going to go do it. That's not her speaking. That's my way of phrasing it. But she said, you will be able to create positive reform just as I did. And she said, and it may seem a small thing at the time. And she said, it makes you feel helpless. Like, a lot of people don't do anything because they feel helpless. But she said, find your own unique way to make that change and make that impact in the world. And then she said, and then find the others who are like-minded and who will help you see it through. And she's showing me also like women, it's almost like they're passing back baskets along a line, and like one person takes it from the person in front of them with their hands, and then they turn and they give it to the person next to them, and then they turn again and take the next basket from that person and turn and give it to the next person. And she said, and there will be plenty to go around. There'll be more than enough for all. And she said, we had to get, this is so cool. She's like, we had to get over our fear of not being fed. Because since they went on strike, they ran the risk of not getting paid, right? And of course they wouldn't get paid because they weren't working during the strike. And she said, we had to run the risk of not being fed and for a little while, and we didn't know how long that would go on. But she said, we ran that risk because she's playing that phrase, justice must be served, is playing through my head. And she keeps saying, it was of utmost importance that we remained in solidarity, because it made them actually bring them back to work and agree to their terms and conditions really quickly. So they actually didn't miss out on that much pay. And she said, and it was positive reform from there on out. And it didn't completely like make their conditions so much better, but it changed some really crucial things. And she said, it gave us a bargaining chip. And she said, it showed them that we had the power and that we were not just going to like, act like doormats. We were not going to lie down and take it, was the phrase she used, but I don't love that phrase. So for obvious reasons, but so she said, it's very important that you understand that this is part of you all, that this is part of what you're meant to do. So if you're hearing this, you're part of a positive change or reform, and you must know your exact way, and your the time and place to do it is now. And she keeps saying, don't just lie down and take it. And she said, you are much more powerful than you believe. And she's showing all these women and girls who, she said, the things you do now to create positive change, they do impact the past, and they impact everyone and everything, everywhere, and everyone on a soul level. Like, it's something she's showing, like the seeds of change going out through all time, dimension, space, and reality, and how those seeds can be planted on such an ethereal level, an energetic level, that we may not even like perceive that we've done anything. And she's saying, now with positive change and positive reform too, you must stay the course. And she said, don't give up, at first glance. And she keeps saying, you've primed the pump, like you're getting things ready. And she said, now go forth, but she's saying, but don't give up at first glance. Keep going. And she said all of these people connected together could cause so much positive change so quickly if they just stood their ground, if they got together and stood their ground, and like, she's showing organization. And she said, it's a very important time for you, all of you, to realize how important you actually are and how powerful you actually can be. But she said, this is a large collective prosperity that you're bringing about. And she's showing all of us, like everyone. And she said, but it's not meant to only be bestowed on a chosen few. It is meant to be prosperous for all. And she said it truly can be heaven on earth, but the change must be made. She's saying from within, and she's showing again, like people just being like, enough is enough, and she said it's like that flame, and she's showing like an internal, the song, an eternal flame. I can't sing it. I'm so sorry. But that's the song that just played in my mind. And oh my God, the song from Les Mis just keeps playing. I'm getting chills over and over from it. And she's saying yes. And she said, so what I learned in my life was not to step aside, and to stand my ground for those who could not, and to be powerful. I needed to be united. To be powerful, I had to be adamant about and had clear resolve about what I wanted to change. And she said, and I had to put, again, like she's showing putting many heads together. And she said it was a lesson for us all to not believe that we were on our own, because many people, she's showing like classes and people in poverty, and like the match girls were, they were, like really, really, very, very poor, and did not have a lot of resources, but they did have each other. And so she said, it was important for these women and girls to realize that they were not alone, that they had each other, and that united together. I'm hearing that phrase, united we stand. Oh, I just got chills. Woo, 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 woo. Okay, sorry. But she said, it's very important. One lesson we learned was not to feel that we were alone in the world simply because of our situations. And she's showing many of the girls being orphans or being sent by their parents to work, and having lost family members, or not being in school, and like not getting to go to school, all these things, having no education, many of them. And so she is showing me again, she said it was important for us to realize that we needed to unite. And that was a lesson unto us. And it was where we found ourselves the most powerful. And she said the other piece of it was that it wasn't about any one of us. It was about all of us. And she's showing how in so many different lifetimes, this cohort of women has come and gone. And she said in many different ways, shapes, and forms. They're not always women, obviously. But she said, we really truly are one, united in energy at the end of the day. She's showing all the cords of light that connect everyone infinitely. And she said, it is the same with your era. It is the same with your people on earth. You are all infinitely connected by cords of light that extend between you and through you and around you. And you just can't see it all the time, though some of you who are more perceptive may be able to catch it. Like she's saying, like catching a little glint of the light. To me, sometimes I can literally see it with my open eye, and sometimes it looks like a translucent energy that I can see like flowing, and I can even tell where people have like control drama stuff going on, because I can see way more flowing toward one person and how they're sitting and how they're being, and the other person, I can see them like flow, like not containing their own energy or remaining in centered and imbalanced. So she's saying, but it is important that you recognize that we're all infinitely connected with this pure source code, and that however you may feel, and she's showing people feeling very alone. She said, however you may feel, you must know that you have the power of she said the power of the whole posse around you, as we would say. Like I call spirit our power posse, our spirit squad. I used to call mine my A team, but I obviously don't anymore for legal reasons. But because my name's Allie, so A team. But she said, yeah, and she's saying yes. And she said, you can call on spirit at any time. You can call on ancestors. You can call on the future generations. And that's one that I think a lot of people don't realize they can do that. But I always say a lot of our guides are future beings, our future selves, future generations, love to come through and help us. Ourselves that have lived our whole entire lifetime in this time are part of our spirit squad as well. And I know it's kind of trippy to think about, but we can call on them for help and support, not just for them to tell us what's going to happen, because that's, there's a pliability to things, but it's more so to ask them, like, what advice do you have? Can you help us with what we're trying to achieve? Help me know where to go and what to do and what to say and to whom, like put me in the right place at the right time. I always tell mine, make it where I don't need, it's not like you have to tell me clairaudiently and then I have to think about and decide if I'm going to do it. Maybe it's so that I'm just compelled. Like I just am like, oh, you know what I'm going to do today? Like just make that energy surge through my body like a lasso, so there's no resistance. There's no thinking about it. There's no mulling over it, etc. There's no, did I hear that right? I don't even need it that way. I don't want to have to think about it. Just like I've given my permission, because they are guides of highest truth, love, and consciousness, to just like kind of, hey, give me that, like, I can't help it. I just have to go do this right now. It always puts me in the right place at the right time. It is always like, I'm like, this is like what that clear channeling ability really is it works through that inner knowing. It works through your intuition. And so she's saying yes. And if you don't realize you're ignited in this, and there can be many of you have the same pulls and the same intuitions at the same time, so that you can be creating positive change. And she's showing the scales tipping in our favor. She said, so that you can be creating positive change and positive momentum ever more quickly. And she's saying, and it can be something where it's like once you start pushing a boulder down a hill, like once you just get it rolling, it just takes off on its own without so much energy and effort from you. And she said, really, most of you are just worried about standing out, like almost like tall poppy syndrome, like being targeted, and she said, but really do not even, I'm hearing that song, don't you worry about a thing. And so she's saying, but don't you worry about that. And she said, dear, she called me dear. She said, don't you worry about that, dear. And she said, with all of you united together, you will be able to affect great change in exactly the right way, united. And she just kind of like did a little head nod to me, and she stepped back a little bit, and she was asking me if I have any questions for her. And, one of my questions was, I had also like read that she had been put in like basically like a pauper's grave with like other people, where it's like basically almost an unmarked grave. And I said, from what I have heard from the other side, they really don't care. I know it sounds weird, but most of the time they're like, I don't care. But sometimes they will come through and say, if someone has been missing, or if there was confusion about their death, or their loved ones don't know where they are, they might say like, hey, I'm over here, or my body's there, or here's what happened, or whatever. If it's not going to cause more harm than good. There are ethical approaches to intuition and stuff too, and we'll get into that another day. But I don't do a lot of those types of channelings, but they do come through from time to time. And so I was just asking her, I was like, I know a lot of beings, they don't really mind. And I was like, what was your response to that? And she said, well, being put in this kind of like pauper's grave, she said, if you really think about it, she said, like attracts like. Which I think is so fun, which is such a funny, she's smirking a little bit. And she said, but really, she said, at the end of the day, the vessel is not your only home. It's almost like the car that you're driving while you're on earth. And she said, so for me, I know that I am not my body, and I never was. It was, again, it's just this really powerful, important vessel that we have when we are in the 3D experience. And she said it is to be treated well and listened to, and she said ignited, like really worked with and trusted, because our bodies are always trying to help us all the time. They're trying to signal to us when we're saying yes, when we should be saying no. They try to tell us like, don't go down that alleyway. They try to tell us like, hey, go for this, like go bring more joy in, like say yes to this thing. I know it's different. It's out of that comfort zone, but like, just say yes. Like they're trying to tell us when we're sick. They're trying to tell us when we're at the beginning of an injury, or, when we're working too hard and we're going to end up burning out, which, I have had a habit of doing that in the past on and off. So I'm very careful about it now, but it does still happen from time to time. And more often than not these days, because of enthusiasm. So it's a better kind of burnout. It doesn't come from pressure. It's more like excitement, but it can still happen. Or from channeling too much energy. I've seen that happen to people too. But she's saying yes. So, and she said, and so for me, she said, she's like, oh, like, and she's going and waving at her grave. Hello. But she said it really is more meaningful to the people on earth that they know that their loved ones are respected and loved and cherished. And she said, and so if your loved ones, if you don't know where they are, or if they're in a grave, that it kind of, she said, like causes you a little disdain, like they're in a situation like that or something else that makes you upset. She said, instead, honor their spirit, honor their life and what they stood for, who they were, the impact they had on you. And she's showing keeping a picture in a frame. And she said, and finding your own way to make peace with that process. And she said, from our perspective, we have no judgment over how humans choose to, she's saying like, what services we provide or what we do during like funeral services or cremation. Do we have big parties? She said, we have no judgment over that. These things are for humans, so that humans can process what they're feeling, so that humans can have, she's saying like there is an importance in ritual for certain people, as long as it's a supportive and a helpful ritual for you, go for it. But it's also showing me that she's saying like there's so many other ways to honor the soul and the connection to spirit. She's showing like keeping a vase of fresh flowers, or planting a little garden for that loved one. And she said even an herb garden, like something that resonates for you, and that it's like you're putting this intent into this lovely living thing, as a way to honor like your ancestor or a loved one that's passed. She's showing like keeping a little picture, or maybe just keeping a little locket. And she said, like you have, I have a little 2 necklaces, one. And, if you've ever seen me on TikTok live, people ask about it all the time. And sometimes in my videos too. One is a little compass. And it's my reminder, like stay connected to your true north. Cause it's something I used to struggle with when I was younger. Stay connected to your intuition, like what's actually feeling right for you. And then I have another one, that is a little angel pendant on it. And sometimes it's my reminder of like, oh yeah, like, cause I think people assume that like, since I can call on the other side, that I'm doing it all the time. I actually like forget sometimes. So it's my reminder. I look in the mirror and I'll be like, oh yeah, I should call in, Michael, I should call in my guides. I should call in, Raphael or, Haniel, or, lately like Metatron has been popping in, or like, who on the other side, might be chiming in to support me, or what messages and energy can I bring through to help myself and all. As is only in the best and highest for myself and all is always the intention that I set. And she's saying, yes. So in terms of that, with your stylish garb is what she said. But, she said you can keep a little trinket or something that reminds you, and keeps you connected to that loved one, but in a special way where it's just like maybe something they stood for, something you loved about them. So like, if you had a grandparent who, for example, like loved daisies, or something, maybe you keep a little locket or something with a daisy on it, or, there's like those pressed flower things that people create now, like something like that. Or she said like a little journal, and, she's showing just like, positive intent in prayer. And she showed someone kissing their fingertips and then putting their fingertips on the frame, like, giving their loved one a little like, kiss on the cheek in a way. And she said, yes. So honor the other side in the way that feels best for you. And she said, but she's showing they don't have a judgment, but they will guide you if you want to honor your loved ones in any specific way. And you can ask them like, what would you recommend? They might co-create something unique for each of them with you. And they'll know what's going to work best for you too. Like, sometimes we don't always hear ourselves or know ourselves as clearly as we might like. And they can really help with like recommending certain things, practices, rituals, ceremonies, different things, for each person, where the person's like, oh, I actually would really like that. I didn't even think of that. So she's saying, yes, exactly. So this episode, is getting a little bit long, but if you have questions that you would like to ask her, anyone out there in podcast land, please feel free to join the Getting Ghosted Intuitive Soul Collective podcast pod squad. We have our ghosties squad in there. And there's also different tiers, and this is all on Patreon. But that podcast group, they actually get like first dibs on things. So they get to submit stories for listener submissions, and they also get to ask questions for upcoming podcast episodes. They will be getting also bonus content and stuff like interviews and extra Q&As with both living and deceased interviews that I do on the podcast. So if you want to submit additional questions, or if you have someone that you would like to see on the podcast, please feel free to reach out and jump in that group so that you can, vote on topics and vote on different people to come forward, or, again, like submit your questions, etc. There's also a link in my link tree that'll be linked up in the show notes. And also I have my link to my website where you can do podcast stories and submissions, etc. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed this episode. This was really fun for me. And if you're interested in learning how to channel more like this and learning different forms of channeling, how to become a clear channel, all of that fun stuff, I will be teaching a course called The Art of Channeling. We are going to start in April. So you have a little bit of time if you're interested, but I definitely absolutely am excited about running this course. I was really feeling called to it, and it's going to give a deeper dive into the art of channeling, how to channel energy, how to do energy work for deeper channeling, what happens when we start channeling, how to channel through writing, how to channel ideas, wisdom, through speaking. So for a lot of you guys who really struggle with using your voice and like really stepping up and making yourselves heard, especially in conversation or around certain people. If maybe you are someone where you're like, I really feel like I have something to say here, but then you hold back, this will be a really great course for you. But you're going to get to practice using your voice and kind of stepping out of that shell. And we'll also be doing channeling practices and energy work practices that help to clear some of the gunk and the stuff that kind of blocks that channel from working very well. Also, it's not just for speakers or writers. It really is for people who are like wanting to find more of a sense of their own unique calling. And maybe you have ideas or certain things where you really want to pinpoint more details of a certain idea or a vision. Maybe there's something around career, or again, like a larger calling that you have, a larger artistic creation or cultural change that you want to participate in making. And so channeling can really help you with that. It can help kind of get those juices flowing and get you moving in the right direction and really pulling through wisdom from your higher self or the other side to help you. In addition, people who do want to channel the other side and they really want to do really seamless channelings, we will be teaching that in there. So for those of you who are like, oh, well, I really wanted a course on mediumship, or I really wanted one on intuition, like learning how to open up as a clear channel is domino effect. It will help those areas as well. It will have a massive effect on them, in fact. And we even see a lot of people who become clear channelers. They don't always realize it, but it comes out in unique ways for them. So a lot of professional athletes, when they get into what's called like the flow zone, they're channeling. Like musicians and painters and public speakers and creators and inventors and all of these different people, they're channeling. So if you've ever like thought about things like that, like how does that person do that? A lot of times it's just about opening your channel and just seeing where is it coming through naturally for you. And in that group, you will get to learn how to find your way and how you want to apply it in your life. So if you're interested, I will link that up in the show notes. It's also linked up on my website. And I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the podcast.